Hello, and welcome back to my small part of the universe. My name is Hailstone. Today we will be covering a biome with electrifying properties, and one that is nearly as empty as the abyss it resides above, the Great Sea. So please, sit back, relax, and let us begin. The only thing more intimidating than the great abyss that lies below is nothing to land on before you fall into its deepest reaches. And that is what characterizes the region of the Great Sea. A vast expanse and one of the most treacherous areas of Europa. Not for the creatures or any hazardous flora, oh no. For what I speak of is something far more electrifying. For the most part, the Great Sea is a rather unremarkable zone. Barren similar to the cold caverns, yet still full of life, hosting large groups of fauna, though in a rather sparse sense. Unlike that of the normal tunnels on Europa that many crews are used to passing through, the Great Sea is a vast abyssal expanse in its own right, holding on to very little in the way of cliffs and jagged plateaus, and protrusions that the other regions boast. Within its sparse landscape, one will find a torrent of freezing waters far colder and jagged than the rest of Europa. Hordes of floating loose icebergs populate these waters, making them hazardous to unarmored submarines, making trade and civilian activities in this region sparse if not completely absent. The furthest in terms of human activity that occurs in this region is mostly only military interests, with both the coalition and separatists working their hardest to counter the other's foothold on Europa, or the various scientific outposts looking into a better energy source for humanity here. And one possibility that presents itself is that of the Piezo crystal. Now, I will admit, I am not much of an electrician, and it is one of my most, if not my most, poorly understood field. Many of my previous crews can attest to this, as they now lay mainly in the abyss. Special condolences to Kevin and Jonathan. But I do understand, meagerly to some extent, piezoelectricity, vaguely. Piezoelectricity occurs in crystals and other similar materials that host a odd latticed structure that's just a little bit off from symmetrical. Due to this structure, when a piezo crystal has a lot of mechanical pressure put upon it, positive and negative charges are pushed together, generating energy as a result. Though, this is how it works on the small scales. I couldn't even begin to guess the nature of these larger, seemingly unstable piezo crystals, as the piezo crystals found here in the Great Sea seem to discharge constantly with large spikes in energy, often lashing out into the nearby waters. For a passing submarine, this can be a death knell. Due to sinking or their captain hitting the ethanol too much, this can be more than hazardous, as the electric discharge can easily bypass the hull of a submarine, overloading the electronics of the sub and destroying key systems, often stranding most subs nigh infinitely, that are unfortunate enough to pass too closely or sink on top of a singular crystal or cluster of them, usually while being pursued by a group of aggressive fauna looking for their next meal, leaving these crystals as the tomb makers for the Great Sea. Though it isn't impossible to survive a piezo crystal, though removing one close to a submarine is difficult. As I mentioned before, the piezo crystals look unstable, and this is very much the truth, as if one is successful in destroying a piezo crystal, this could mean death for them and many on the submarine, as when a crystal is ruptured, it will release a torrent of kinetic energy, utterly thrashing any nearby diver close enough and ripping through the hull of a submarine, even easier than an endworm, possibly killing those on board and leaving them with a mess of a cleanup job. From my experience, the best way to deal with a piezo crystal is to indeed destroy it, usually by a security officer from a distance with explosive harpoons or high-caliber guns, with those still on the submarine suited up in appropriate hardware or regulated to areas of the sub as far away as possible from the piezo site, and be more than ready to repair any damage to the hull and electrical systems to get the sub running once more. During my lifetime here on Europa, I have always been puzzled at the presence of plants in these waters. Now, by plants, I don't mean the ones that we brought here. The ones I mean are raptor's bane, saltvine, and pomegranate. These flora, for whatever reason, don't seem that alien, as they could almost be mistaken for plants on Earth, as they are fully able to survive in highly oxygenated environments, something that they share with husks, mud raptors, and crawlers, being able to cycle oxygen themselves, or relying on other processes to survive in these external environments. If this is so, where does oxygen come from on Europa? Among my few guesses for this would be the plentiful Piezo crystals. My theory is that it has something to do with some form of natural electrolysis. I am unsure of how this process could be met in nature, but due to the highly charged circumstances of the crystal and the nearby metal-rich waters, I wouldn't think it's entirely impossible, though I doubt Piezo crystals would be the sole producers of oxygen on Europa, and there could be many other things contributing to it. But for now, we will only discuss the said crystal, as well as the oxygen it produces and its effects on the surrounding environs. Concerning the interaction of oxygen and plants on Europa, I believe that during certain shifts of Europa's orbit around Jupiter, there are warmer periods, effectively being a Europan summer, cracking the surface ice and allowing the water vapor to spew out into space via a geyser, probably making the initial colonization a tad bit easier. During this period, I believe this allows gaseous pockets to form where the water and ice layers meet near the surface, possibly allowing seeds a brief respite from the icy water and allowing them to take root. Though these gas pockets don't last long, perhaps only a few weeks to a couple of months, allowing them to grow just enough to produce seeds before the gas pockets break apart or flood, sending the seeds into the currents of Europa to be spread elsewhere. I believe these gas pockets could also be alluded to by the crawlers and mud raptors' ability to survive in oxygen-rich environments. Certainly more so of the mud raptors. So, during some part of their lifetime must be spent mostly or at least partly in a nearly dry, oxygen-rich environment, probably heavy with various floras and other creatures we have yet to witness here on Europa. Though perhaps this is more of my own longing to witness those vast wildernesses I've only read about back on Earth, in some strange combination of my desire to find yet unseen areas here on Europa. There is simply so much we do not know about. Eventually, I will discuss the plants found here on Europa, but I wish to do so in a more concentrated subject on the matter. Thank you for watching another one of my videos. I apologize, as to me this video felt a bit shorter than some of my others. Anyhow, that is mostly due to my own fault, and I apologize for how long this took to get made. So until next time, have a great, safe rest of your week.